The year is 1981. Children are shouting Rubik's Cubes across the playground, and everyone is celebrating the birth of Britney Spears. But popular culture had no idea it was about to get whipped round the neck by its newest hero. That's right, today we're talking about Indiana Jones. But is he the greatest movie character of all time? Well, if you've got 8 hours to kill, go on Prime Video, watch all 4 movies back to back and decide for yourself. But if you've got a job, then let me tell you why I think he is. George Lucas came up with the idea for the character when he saw a drunk dad on holiday assaulting some locals, so he teamed up with his friend Steven Spielberg, and the result was such a success that the surname Jones is now widely popular today. But who to cast? Well, the part was originally offered to Tom Selleck, but after 7 unsuccessful attempts to shave off his moustache, he had to turn it down. Thankfully, George Lucas ran out of conversation with Harrison Ford on the set of Star Wars one day, offered him the role, and the world's coolest archaeologist was born. Now, we all know archaeology is looking for plates and heads in hot countries, which sounds a bit boring, but Indiana Jones proved you can also kill people. We first saw him in action in Raiders of the Lost Ark, a tragic story about how teachers are so underpaid they need to risk their lives stealing shiny things. This PG-rated box office smash was the perfect mix of adventure, comedy and horse, and shines a light on what the Duke of Edinburgh Award would look like if it went past gold. The film starts in the woods of South America, where a man made of sweat breaks into an ancient temple and burgles a statue of a little golden gentleman. He only makes one tiny mistake by thinking a bag of dust weighs the same as solid gold, which completely destroys this invaluable place of worship, so he's quite rightly chased away by some angry locals who fortunately have never shot an arrow before. In fact, he's such a good burglar that some men pay him to look for a magical box with the 10 Commandments inside it, a box that is so special that people can't stop humping it. So he teams up with his ex-girlfriend who smokes cigarettes, which is a film's way of telling you that a lady is good at fighting, and at one point leaves her tied up with some murderers when he realises it would be safer for himself to abandon her. He spends most of the film trying to break all 10 of the commandments in the box, and is in fact so naughty that Spielberg had to make all the baddies Nazis, because they're the only people worse than a scruffy robber who smashes priceless artefacts and murders a man just for drying his wet sword. In fact, Spielberg has a history of making the baddies so obviously bad that the audience can grasp it straight away, like sharks or Captain Hooks, or Nazis or Nazis or Nazis. And once again it worked a treat. People loved everything about this film. The action, the beautifully crafted dialogue.
I'm so pleased you're not dead!
But most of all, their new brand of cheeky, flirty murderer, and they were desperate for more. So for Spielberg's first ever sequel, he took a leaf out of James Bond's book by having a completely new location, new woman he manipulates, and dressing him exactly like James Bond. The Temple of Doom shows Indiana getting up to just as much handsome bravery as ever. After falling asleep on a flight, Indy wakes up to find the pilots have been replaced with ghosts. He's so frightened that he and his friends jump out in a plane made of boat. After inexplicably surviving, the locals naturally assume they're gods and ask them to look for a rock they've lost. Families around the world loved this 2-hour story about child slavery, human sacrifice and hangings. And although it didn't do as well at the box office for some reason, Spielberg had cemented Indiana Jones as a cultural icon. In the 80s, everyone wanted to be him. You couldn't move without someone shouting his famous catchphrase at you.
Why don't you give your mouth a rest?
He was a completely new type of hero. He was relatable because he had a vulnerable side, and he didn't care about the rules because he wore a hat indoors and punched waitresses. And it was this added depth to the character that Spielberg explored more of in the third film, The Last Crusade, where our grave-robbing hero stoops to new lows by robbing local florists and hard-working mechanics. And his addiction to stealing artefacts has even started to affect his work. His students are angry he hasn't marked any of their homework in 3 years, so much so they're not even flirting back when he ogles them like a creep. He's not the man he used to be, and sets off looking for a magic cup that a rock has told him can turn him into a boy forever. Even his choice of lady is deteriorating, and he gets seduced by a pretty Aryan woman with a German accent who, in one of cinema's greatest ever twists, turns out to be a Nazi. She ties him up and tries to kill him, but instead of tying him to a radiator or train tracks like most people would, she ties him to his dad, which are famously easy to escape from. But despite all of his flaws, we still love him because he kills Nazis, even though most of the Nazis are so stupid they end up killing themselves, either from letting their hair grow too fast or not wearing sunglasses when they let God out of a box. He's such a brilliant character, and it's so clever making him an archaeologist because we get to meet people from completely different time periods, all the way from a 700-year-old knight wearing a full-body sieve right up to a man inexplicably wearing modern-day t-shirt and jeans. So there we have it. Spielberg really has created one of the world's most lovable criminals. Okay, he's not perfect. He did irreparable damage to invaluable bits of history and tattooed the eyes of a student he loved, but he's charming. And even though he never has a plan, he always manages to think of something clever, like grievous bodily harm or first-degree murder. And like I said, Indiana Jones is such a cool character that all the films are available to watch on Prime Video, even the bonus fourth one where he hides in a nice cold fridge so he doesn't get too hot from a nuclear bomb. I love Indiana Jones, and if you've got a problem with that, then why don't you give your mouth a rest?